Hey guys, today we are going to be learning about Brown versus Board of Education. My name is Bella and this is Rihanna.
Hey guys, so it's me Rihanna and I'm going to be telling you guys about the background for this case. Essentially, during this time period, segregation was still a major issue. In the States, there were different sections for literally everything that you had access to in the public. There were different entrances for colored people and white people, different drinking fountains, different places that you could sit at a restaurant, and different bus seatings. That also included different schools for white and colored people. The problem in this case arose when parents realized or began to saw that there were more accessible white schools nearby and available to their child, but they were still forced to go to the colored school. And although this withheld separate but equal, those schools were actually in bad condition. They didn't have the proper books, didn't have proper materials, and they were also far away from, for example, the petitioner in this case, Linda Brown. They were far from their home, so it caused their child to go the extra mile just to receive an education, which should be equal opportunity for all children. So I mentioned separate but equal, and if you guys remember, that was brought about in Plessy v. Ferguson.
So basically, this guy named Plessy was he appeared white and he was attempting to get into the white car, and he got in. That was until he came up to the conductor and said, "I'm actually 1/8 black." To which they kicked him out of the car and he was put to trial against for that. This created separate but equal, meaning that you can separate the races and as long as they were in equal condition. So that's what they used to argue against the petitioner or to defend themselves in this case.
The NAACP, which is the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, they really wanted to focus on integration of people into schools. So they wanted to integrate the school system on all levels of education, including college, high school, elementary. They were really active with this and even forced colored people to go into universities to try to evoke change. They were large leaders in the civil rights movement, and you'll see them supporting the petitioner in this case.
Okay, so we have Oliver L. Brown and 13 other parents. The lead attorney of the petitioner is Thurgood Marshall, and he claimed that having a segregated school would have detrimental effects on the children.
So what I'm drawing right here is that this little third grader African American girl has to 6 blocks away from her house to the bus stop so she can go to Monroe Elementary, which was a segregated black school, which is 1.5 kilometers away, instead of walking 7 blocks from her house. So this shows how far the distance between the two and why it's like unnecessary to have a segregated school system.
What this case brings about is having two separate schools that are segregated from each other. It violates the Equal Protection Clause, which is inside the 14th Amendment. So having two separate facilities, one mainly for white, and then the other one for black children, they were seen as inherently unequal. Thus, it didn't follow the Equal Protection Clause. So having a segregated school system led African Americans to believe that they are inferior to their white counterparts because of the segregated school system, and that this system should not be legally permissible. So the argument of the defendant is by the Board of Education of Topeka, and basically what they argued was that the Congress didn't have the segregation in public schools in mind when the 14th Amendment was ratified. So this also dates back to the case Plessy versus Ferguson, challenging the separate but equal clause. The Chief Justice is Fred Vinson, who unfortunately died. Thus, the case passed on to Earl Warren, and he was known for passing the civil rights cases, and the vote count ended up to be 9-0 for against segregation in schools.
Alright guys, so the ruling in this case was in favor for Brown. So they won the case, and this was because the state sanction of segregating public schools was a violation of the 14th Amendment, which means that you have equal protection under the law. So they were saying that these schools obviously weren't in equal condition, and that you were putting a child through like all this stuff to get to her designated colored school when she could easily just go to this school right here. So it showed that this wasn't equal, and their rights as people weren't being protected. Alright guys, so why is this important? Why do we study it? Why are we doing a video on it? So this case is important to understand because it overturned the doctrine of separate but equal. They said that this was unconstitutional and that it had no place in public education. This also added onto what the 14th Amendment was. It was basically saying that states can't deny laws that protect the equal rights of individual people. So that basically means that everyone has the equality of education, and they wanted to show that in this court case. It was also very important to the civil rights movement, and it helped progress the movement further by integrating school kids. For example, like Ruby Bridges, boom, like she was the first, she was the youngest, I think, to become integrated into an elementary school, and although it was a hard process, it was needed to advance this movement. But the main takeaway from the decision in Brown v. Board is that separate but equal is no longer applicable, and that states must reserve the rights of their citizens under the law. Alright, so for our first question, what is an example of a public place that would have been separate at this time period? So yeah, basically any public place would work. Transportation, buses, restaurants, water fountains, movie theaters, stores, like entrances to stores. Yeah, good job. Okay, so the second question I have for you guys is, which court case did Brown v. Board overturn? Okay, yeah, it was Plessy v. Ferguson, separate but equal.